It seems we have a few new miniatures to talk about today because not only has there been a bit of a leak, one from GW itself, but we have now also seen the two new upcoming minis that will be able to be picked up from your annual Warhammer Plus subscription. So first of all, the thing we need to talk about is the small leak that we had from the German Warhammer page a couple of days ago. They have, I think, unintentionally shown off this image, which is on your screen now. This is Captain Areios, who is the current captain of the 6th Company of the Ultramarines. He made a name for himself, if you don't know who he is, in the Dawn of Fire book series that I think released around about the 9th edition period, and sort of sought to further the lore and background of the Primaris Marines and sort of the current setting in 40k. It went to a lot about the Ultramarines versus the Death Guard and told us a lot about Guilliman and what he was up to and that sort of thing. So he was present in that series. He's then had a further tie-in, which I don't think is out yet. I think it's upcoming, which is in his own unique story called The Master of Rites. And this again features him going into battle against the Death Guard from the sound of it. So this seems to be essentially the Games Workshop tie-in miniature that they quite often do for sort of important lore characters. We've seen it for book characters like Uriel Ventris, and we've seen it for Lieutenant Titus as well from the Space Marine game. So they do sometimes tend to do these unique bespoke minis for a particular book series or game series or whatever it may be, just to tie them together and obviously sell a few more models. Now, it does have to be said before we go any further, they do seem to be rather Ultramarine focused in general, these tie-in minis, which is a valid complaint, and I get it. It is a bit of a shame that they do always seem to be so Ultramarine focused. Certainly for Captain Areios himself, he does look to be very Ultramarine specific. He's got that molded Ultramarine insignia on his shoulder pads. They definitely look like they are molded rather than just transfers. And then if you look at his backpack, he's got that large Omega insignia on the back of it too. So I don't think this will be a mini that you can just buy and then straight away build, put on the table and use as another chapter. Although if you're with friends, obviously you could. But it doesn't look like it's going to be the most complicated mini to convert if you want to get him and use him for your own chapter. It certainly doesn't look from the miniature that he has any really hard to reach Ultramarine insignias or logos or anything like that on him. It does look to just be the backpack and the shoulder pads. So with some careful filing on the shoulder pads and some clipping on the backpack, you should be able to get rid of those. Equally, depending on how the mini is in terms of separate pieces, you might be able to just use a spare backpack that you've got or some spare shoulder pads that you've got and just immediately build him for use in another chapter. So I do think he is potentially quite chapter agnostic. It's just it does look like he is going to come with those Ultramarine shoulder pads and the backpack. And I think the fact that you can hopefully make this guy fairly chapter agnostic quite easily is a fairly good thing. He certainly does seem to be a nice mini. He's got a fairly static pose, a fairly stoic pose, it has to be said. But one thing that I do really like is that he's got a Thunderhammer. We don't see them all that often on the new Primaris models, so it is quite nice to see a new Thunderhammer on a mini. And I think if you are going to be using him as a lieutenant or a captain, or maybe even just a particularly blinged up intercessor sergeant who can take Thunderhammers, this could be a really good use for him. Based on previous models we've seen like this, like Uriel Ventris, I imagine he will come in at around the £26 mark, and he will likely drop around at the same time that his tie-in book drops. I don't know if we have a release date for that yet, but they will certainly drop around the same time to maximize the sales for GW. But I do think that it's going to be one that you may want to pick up. There are going to be some chapters that will really like the design and certainly the fact that he's got a Thunderhammer. Chapters like the Salamanders I think will really like him. Other melee focused chapters like the Blood Angels, they could certainly find use for another character with a Thunderhammer in their list. So whether you are a fan of the Dawn of Fire series and you just want to keep up with the escapades of Captain Areios when the Master of Rite book comes out, or you just want another lieutenant or captain or intercessor sergeant model that looks a bit more unique and interesting, he could well be worth picking up. Moving on now though to the two other minis which were revealed actually today. These are both from the Warhammer Plus annual subscription service, so there is a little bit of a commitment to getting these. The article they put up today does explain that you need to either sign up or renew an annual subscription to Warhammer Plus, and then you can claim your choice of the minis, so you get to choose one of them, you don't get to choose both. You get your choice of mini after the 22nd of September. Now, you do need 12 months of consecutive subscription to claim it. You can't just subscribe for 1 month, then get this and then cancel it, unfortunately. But you can pick up your choice of these minis if you do subscribe to a year. You can also get the other one later by buying it as you normally would if you do want both of them, but certainly you get to choose one of them as they call it a freebie essentially, but it's not because you're paying for your Warhammer subscription, but you get to choose one of those two to be sent out to you. They do also say in the article there are some new bonuses coming with the Warhammer Plus subscription. Those with an annual or monthly subscription will now also get a 15% discount code once per month that can be spent on the merch store. Now, I personally think this would incentivize a hell of a lot more people to sign up to Warhammer Plus if it was a once per month discount on anything, including minis. I think that would really get a load of people signing up for it, and in the long run would probably make GW more money overall despite that once per month discount. But I mean, I'm not a businessman, what the hell do I know? Certainly the merch store isn't the most exciting thing to be getting a discount on, but at the same time, if you are into 40k and you like the hobby, you can get some fairly cool things. There's some nice bits of clothing like t-shirts or hats, and I think even the Joy Toy kits are up on there. So if you like collecting those, that could be a good way to get one of the new ones on a monthly basis at a little bit of a discount. Now, I don't think just that alone will be enough to convince anyone that was sort of on the fence about subscribing to subscribe. I think you're only going to subscribe if you want to subscribe to Warhammer Plus, and this is just a nice extra bonus. I don't think this 15% once per month discount is really going to sway anyone's mind too much. But if you really were on the fence and you were just waiting for that one final thing to tip you over to think it's worthwhile subscribing, this is a nice little addition to consider. In either case, we're talking about the minis, and both of them are very cool, I think, and certainly both are worth, in my opinion, actually considering making that Warhammer Plus subscription for, because I do think they are both very awesome. The first one is the 40k one. This is called Infinity's Lament and is a stunning new Spiritseer. In my opinion, it is miles better than the current one. It's a lot more dynamic, and it of course has a lot more storytelling behind it with that gorgeous diorama base where the Spiritseer is sort of leaning down to get the spirit stones from the fallen Wraithlord to save it from the machinations of Slaanesh. You can see that sort of really cool battle damage on the fallen Wraithlord, and it is just a really unique and interesting design. I don't know enough about Aeldari lore to know whether a Spiritseer stepping on a Wraithlord would be considered sacrilegious in some way, but it is quite a cool pose, and it is quite a nice diorama base that would fit in really well if you were running something like an Eandan army along all your other Wraith constructs and Wraith units. I think it would be a really nice piece to slot in there. Likewise, on the Age of Sigmar front, we get another sort of diorama piece. This is a model that actually a lot of people have wanted to see updated for a while now. It is a brand new Necromancer. Now, this kit is called the Summons, and it actually features a fairly buff new Necromancer. He is a far cry from the old decrepit version that we know and love from today that has been around since, I think, certainly I had one in Warhammer Fantasy, 8th edition of Warhammer Fantasy. I don't know when it exactly came out, if it came out sort of earlier than that, but it has been around for definitely over a decade now. But this guy is very different. He actually has muscles on him. He doesn't necessarily fit the vibe of what I would call a classic Necromancer, which is really weak and feeble and just all about magic. But I mean, then again, who's to say what's normal when it comes to a human that has delved down the path of necromancy? Maybe they are particularly buff because they can, dig up bodies from the grave all the time, or they just can enhance their strength with their dark magics. Who knows? In any case, he is standing atop that broken tombstone and is currently in the process of raising a couple of skeletons from the ground. So I think it's a really cool set piece. I do really love the sort of this story it tells. And what I also really like is not only is the Necromancer a really nice design, like I love the book that he's got, I love the cape that he's got. The skeletons are also that new style, that new design that we started to see from the Cursed City release. So it does, again, fit very, very nicely amongst the other shambling hordes of bones and flesh that you will have in your Soulblight army. So they're both really cool, and they both would fit in exceptionally well into an Aeldari or a Soulblight army. But this is also where I start to have a bit of an issue with them, because yes, they are very, very cool set pieces, but they are definitely on the wrong base sizes. Necromancers, according to the latest army book, are meant to be on a 32mm base, and I did have to look this up because, as I said, I don't play Aeldari, but Spiritseers are currently on a 25mm base. And both these diorama bases are clearly much, much, much bigger than that, with the Wraith Lord on the Aeldari one and the 3 skeletons added to the base of the Necromancer. I mean, I think they're bigger than 40mm. I wouldn't be surprised if these were like 50mm base sizes. Maybe they're 40, but it just, the fact that you can get 3 skeletons and a Necromancer on that base, I really don't know if you would be able to do that on a 40. So I think that one especially might actually be a 50mm base. So if that is the case, that is much bigger than they're meant to be, and it's basically double the base size that they're meant to be for the Spiritseer. And I mean, yes, if I was just playing with some friends, I would absolutely have no problem whatsoever. I would be happy for my friend to use that Spiritseer in place of a regular Spiritseer, purely because it looks so cool and I think it would be so fun to see on the table. But if these base sizes are different and they aren't the correct base sizes, then if you play in tournaments or in any kind of competitive scene, then it's going to be much more difficult for you to use these new models. And to me, that's a really, really big issue. Now, I get the Games Workshop maybe wanted to go for something of a more diorama style with these Warhammer Plus minis that people would just be able to get and build and paint up and maybe just show off as a one-off project rather than as a purely usable tabletop mini. But I still think it wouldn't be that hard to at least make them still playable. There's plenty of ways they could do it. They could just release the models on the correct base sizes, or they could do like they did with the old Forge World Primarchs, where they had their diorama base, but they had a smaller base that the main model itself, so the Spiritseer and the Necromancer, would be on, that just would slot into that bigger diorama one. So when you were showing them off on your shelf, you could put them together and have this nice diorama piece. But when you wanted to bring them into a game, you just pull the smaller base size out and just have it on that smaller base size. Hell, I think for the Spiritseer, you could just bring the kit with that diorama base and a separate 25mm base and have a peg on the Spiritseer's foot so that he could, you wouldn't even need to glue him in. You could just either slot him into your diorama base when you wanted to show him off, or just pull him out and slot him into the 25mm base when you wanted to play him. It would just be so easy to do. And I mean, we don't know, maybe that is going to be the case. Maybe there will be a way to separate them so you can play it. It doesn't look like it's going to be the easiest thing to do. Certainly for the Spiritseer one, that looks like it's going to be quite tricky to get onto a 25mm base based on how the pose is and where the Wraith Lord is. What I also think they could have done is, yes, it's a Necromancer and a Spiritseer, but if they did want to go for these really unique, interesting models with a bit more character and story behind them, just give them their own datasheet or war scroll. Yes, it would have to be Legends, so again, you might run into the issue of running it in a competitive scene, but you could always just say, this is blah, blah, just make a name for the Necromancer and a name for the Spiritseer. This is so-and-so. Their rules are usable as part of the codex. It wouldn't have to be a Legends thing. They could just add a slight addendum to it and just give them their own unique war scroll. They wouldn't have to change too much, but they could make it so that these characters were slightly different to justify their bigger base size, and they would still have that cool diorama piece, but still be absolutely usable in games. Because the thing that, at least from my experience, I might be wrong, someone correct me if I am, but none of the Warhammer Plus minis have their own unique rules. They tend to just be used as a proxy for what they're meant to represent. So ones like Karlina von Karstein, who came out a couple of years ago, she just gets used as a regular Vampire Lord. She doesn't have her own war scroll. So there's just a few things, and as I said, I might be completely wrong. They might have thought ahead and sorted this already so that they will be fully usable in games. I'm just not 100% sure, and I really hope that you can use these guys in games because they deserve to be both display pieces and usable game pieces because they're such good models. Like, both of them are so cool. It would be such a shame if you built them and painted them up but were really forced to just have them sitting on your shelf rather than on the battlefield, I think. That's going to be enough of that rant because, as I said, GW may have thought ahead and have completely sorted this out so that you can use them. You know, I don't know. We've just seen the minis today, so I could be completely barking up the wrong tree. That is just a concern that I have. In either case, though, as I said, I love both the models. I will definitely be picking up the Necromancer because I play Soulblight, but I know that Alex plays Aeldari. He hasn't played them on the channel yet, but he will be doing at some point, I'm sure. But I really hope that he picks up the Spiritseer because I cannot wait to see it in person. It looks like such a awesome, gorgeous model. I also really like Captain Areios. I will probably be picking him up to use as a lieutenant or a captain in my Dark Angels. And I just think we have got some really cool new models to look forward to, whether you play AOS or 40k, and whether you play Space Marines or Aeldari. But that's going to be it for this video. What are your thoughts on Captain Areios? And also, what are your thoughts on these two new Warhammer Plus minis? And which of the two will you be picking up first? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.